So how to develop a powerful personal philosophy. Let me go full screen. There we go. So let me stick up a few key facts first of all. Philosophy is revealed by the choices we make. It's very easy to deceive yourself by thinking that your philosophy is determined by what goes through your mind. Okay, what do I mean by that? Sometimes you may think about something, but then for one reason or another, you don't end up doing what you're thinking. Now, your action becomes different to what you're thinking. Now, the question is, what determines your philosophy? Is it what you were thinking, or is it what you did? Now, my answer is what you did is what determines your philosophy. I'll give you an example. You're thinking of cutting down your weight, for instance. So you're thinking, I need to start exercising. Exercising is a good thing. Yeah, it's brilliant. I need to be a person of exercise. This is what I need to be doing. But then when it comes to actually you implementing that and doing it on a daily basis, you don't quite do it. You always come up with excuses, or other things become more important. Your work, your family, this, that, and the other, your sleep, or whatever else that may be, and you don't end up doing what you said you'd do. Now, though intellectually you know that exercising is important, but your philosophy says otherwise. Because had your philosophy been saying that exercises is important and you're a person of exercises, then you would have done it. There is this thing I always say. I say, as humans, we like the idea of change, but we don't quite like the pain of change. You know what I mean? So when it's in the mind and we're thinking about changing, about doing stuff, we think, oh, this is great. Oh, I can do that. Oh, this is brilliant. I can start that new business. Yeah, amazing. Oh, I can do this. Oh, this is brilliant. You know, I can start, calling my friends every week, go and meet them every time. Oh, this is brilliant. When you think about it, it's brilliant. All these changes, all these things are really good. But then when it comes to actually implementing them, and you start thinking about, right, I'm going to have to call this guy, I'm going to have to schedule a meeting with this person, I'm going to have to stop doing this and go and meet this guy, or I'm starting a business, then I'm going to have to do this, I'm going to have to cut my hours of work. Oh, that might mean, my salary goes down, I might have to do some cuts in the house. Oh, do I really want to do this? So the pain of the change is not that great. And usually we fall short of results. So when it comes to philosophy, it comes out the choices you make. You can tell that your philosophy was refined. You can tell that your philosophy has changed if your choices start changing, if you start acting differently, if your routine and your habits start changing, okay? Right, now information that surrounds us has an impact on how we think. I've said this before, that since infancy till now, it's an accumulation of information that has been bombarding our minds constantly. And it is that information that has helped shape our philosophy. And therefore, philosophy is built on the accumulation of those gathered information. And that process doesn't stop. It goes on for the rest of your life. And so it is just your choice whether you want to take control of that and actively decide what goes into your mind, and have that control and say, like, right, now I really want to take control of my philosophy, and therefore I'm going to take control of what goes into my mind, what sort of information I'm gathering on a daily basis, because that is the first step towards you refining your philosophy. So yeah, increase the quality of information gathered and you'll refine your philosophy just like that. That's all you need to do. If you increase the quality of the information that you're gathering, your philosophy starts getting refined. And basically everything we'll be talking about today, all the steps we'll be talking about today, it's just in you trying to increase the quality of the information that you're gathering. So first point, according to Jim Rohn, this is how you can refine your philosophy. This is how you can build powerful personal philosophy. Learn from personal experience. Now, this sounds very simple, but it's something that we don't tend to do as well as we should, to be honest. Because if you think about it, your life in itself is a wealth of information. It's a wealth of knowledge. There is so much that has happened to you that has happened to you personally, or you have seen, or you have heard about, or you've gone through, you have experience of, good or bad, you know, but it's a wealth of information. But we don't tend to take enough time to really take that in, to really sort of analyze our lives and really sort of look at it in an objective way and think, right, I've gone through this, I've had these problems, I've had these setbacks, I've had these wins, you know, how can I enhance them? How can I avoid these problems from happening again? What is it that I need to do to develop myself so that I can do better next time? Jim Rohn once famously said that don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. You know what I mean? So rather than you sitting there and thinking, oh, I wish these things never happened to me. Because when you say that, basically, you're trying to get as much as quickly as you can, you know. But when you analyze it and think, right, what do I need to do? What skills do I need to develop so that I can handle this situation better? Because problems are always with us. I just posted this a few days ago. I think it was yesterday or the day before, I can't remember, on Facebook, that we will always have problems. Problems will always be with us. The issue, the key to success is to constantly outgrowing our problems. You know what I mean? So it's not the matter of you living your life to a point where you don't have any more problems, because everybody has problems. Even the person you admire the most, you think, oh, that guy's an icon, that guy is the person I look up to, I need to be like that guy. Even he or she has problems as well. So it's not about avoiding problems, it's about you honing your skills and to meet those challenges that you have and really be effective in the way you deal with them. So those who cannot remember the past are condemned to repeat it. George Santayana famously said that. And there are lots of variations of that same statement. Others speak of history and say that history not learned, if we don't learn the lessons of history, we're bound to repeat its mistakes and things like that. But it's the same thing, we can apply that even to our personal lives. If we cannot learn from our personal experiences and what we've gone through, good or bad, what's going to happen is we're going to end up stumbling on the same pitfalls each and every time. So it's a good habit to really take time to think about life, and we can do that on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on an annual basis, to take a review, to take stock of our lives, to take stock. That's the good word. You know, if you've ever been in sales, and worked in a store or in a shop, this word will take a completely different meaning. Other people in other offices might talk of an inventory, but an inventory is different, because with an inventory it doesn't change as often. It's not as fluid. It's not as dynamic as a stock. You know, with stock, those are the stuff that you're selling in the shop. So it's all about what you have in store, and how much of each stuff you have, how much is being sold, how much you need to restock, and how much of each stuff needs to be stocked, and sales, and how much of that you're selling, and all this stuff. And it's something that you have to keep doing it constantly. In big stores, they have really elaborate softwares to do their stock for them, which is great. But if you're just running a small shop, I once used to run a pharmacy down in Tanzania, and it was quite a small shop, and we used to do the stock manually. So you'd have this big sort of like a logbook, and that way you're logging in everything, you know, that you have this number, and this is what was sold last week, and therefore we need to order this much if we want it to last for such and such many weeks, and this and that and the other. And it's something that we had to do almost on a daily basis, sometimes on a weekly basis, sometimes on a monthly basis. And if you don't do that, there are a few times that would happen. Maybe I'm too busy with other things and I haven't got time to do the stock. And what ends up happening is you just get a phone call that, oh, we've run out of this medication, we've run out of this thing, and people are asking for it, and we haven't got it in stock. Why? Because we didn't keep track of it. And it's the same with our lives as well. If we don't keep track of what's happening in our lives and whether it's working for us or not, we just end up repeating the same mistakes, and it becomes really detrimental to our lives. Or sometimes we don't quite know how to really spend our time, because we don't know what works for us and what doesn't. But if you're taking stock, say on a daily basis, every evening you're sitting down and looking at the things that you've been doing through the day and look at the things that really work for you, the relationships that you need to sort of like develop more because they're enriching your life. If you don't take stock of that, how are you going to inform yourself how to spend your time the following day? You know, you just don't know. You're just going to wake up the following morning and just go as if, you know, blindly, basically. And that's not the way to live. So taking stock of our life experiences is really, really important. And that really helps in building and molding our philosophy. Now, there are three approaches to personal experience. One, you can choose to ignore it. And it's unfortunate that we've spent a lot of our time in the past ignoring our personal experiences. I certainly have done that for many years. Another way is to manipulate it. There are other people that spend a lot of time thinking about their experiences, but they are manipulating it. What do I mean by that? Those who manipulate, what they do, usually it comes in the form of excuses or blame game. Right, let me explain that. You got fired at work. That's a bit extreme, but anyway, I'll go with it. All right, you've gotten fired at work, and here you are. You're thinking of that situation, and what you're thinking is, these people are so unfair. You know, this person said this about me, and as a result, you know, the HR weren't listening to me. I wrote this letter, they wouldn't do this. I was supposed to do that, I didn't do that. Basically, you're spending a lot of time analyzing that situation, yes, but you're thinking of everything and everybody else except yourself. You're forgetting the most important person, you. You haven't actually sat down and thought, right, this is my life. This is about me, right? What is it that I did that got me to where I am right now? And what is it that I can do different to make sure that this doesn't happen again? It doesn't matter what everybody else does. I mean, don't get me wrong. It could be someone else's fault. It could be someone else that has done something terrible, true. But if you're not thinking of yourself and what you could have done, you're manipulating the issue, because what you're doing, you're deflecting it to someone else. You're thinking, it's someone else's fault. You're trying to look for someone to blame. And by doing that, basically, you're rationalizing it, and what you're trying to say is, I'm all right, I'm good, I can keep doing what I'm doing. Had it not for other people doing what they did, I wouldn't be where I am. But if you really think about it, that's not true. There is a lot you could have done differently. In life, there are so many options. You can start your life all over again and do it completely differently. It's within you. It's within your power. You can do it. Nobody else, just you. So this whole point about, it's someone else's fault, even if it is still a cop-out. The best way to live your life is not to manipulate circumstances, not to manipulate experiences. It is for you to actually learn from it, own it. And that's the third approach. And I think that's the best approach you can ever have, to learn from your personal experiences. Look at it and say, right, what is it that I could have done differently? Or if it was a good experience, you can look at it and think like, right, this is great. This works for me. How can I expand it? How can I make this come into other areas of my life? How can I do this? How can I expand relationships? How can I expand my influence on others? How can I expand whatever that is? You know, if it's a positive experience, how do I expand it? How do I make it work better for me? If it is not a good experience, how do I learn from it? What is it that I need to do differently to develop, make sure that I don't end up in the same hurdle, and so on and so on. So those are the three approaches to personal experience. You can either ignore it, you can choose to manipulate it, or you can choose to learn from it. Now, that was the first one, learning from your own experience. Now, the second one is to learn from outside voice. Now, here we're talking about coaches, mentors, consultants. With consultants, mainly, it's like companies. Sometimes companies do this. For instance, not long ago, I think towards the end of last year, I was involved as a consultant with a strategy company. There is sort of like a business strategy firm that I was consulting for, and they were doing a research for another company, which was more like a charity. It's like a charity, and the charity was trying to sort of set their roadmap for the next couple of years. So they were trying to look at their situation objectively, to look at their goals, their current market, the people they're trying to reach, and this, that, and the other, and the people that contribute to them, the funders, their sponsors and stuff. And so they wanted an objective view of that, and rather than them, because it's a huge company, it's an international company, rather than, so they have the resources, they could have done it within themselves, because it's a huge company, they've got thousands of employees, they could have sat down within and do their own analysis of where they want to go in the next 3 years. But they chose otherwise. They decided that, right, we're doing all this on a daily basis, but we need to have a consultant, an external firm, to come in and look at our situation from the outside and do a research and give us sort of ideas going forward on what we can implement for the next 3 years. And that's where the company I was consulting for came in, and that's the project that we did for them for a couple of months. So consultants are very important, and what they do is they just bring that fresh perspective, because they come in as a neutral person. They're not entangled in the emotions and the excuses of it all. For instance, if you're talking of a coach, someone who's coaching you into something, if you have your personal trainer, for instance, with exercises, for instance, you know, your personal trainer doesn't feel the pain of you exercising. You know, he doesn't feel the pain of you waking up in the morning, but he understands the importance of it. So he can come in as a neutral person and say, right, you need to get up in the morning and do 1, 2, 3, 4. You need to, you know, start pumping up that iron. Though you kind of feel like, oh, this is too much, I have to stop. He's like, nope, give me 5 more. You know what I mean? So sometimes we need these external voices to kind of push us a little bit further, to give us that slightly different perspective, to kind of give us that objective assessment of the situation. Because sometimes, because we're so much entangled in our own lives, we tend to miss the bigger picture. We can't quite see the picture. And therefore, to get that objective assessment, sometimes we need that external voice, that outside voice person who can tell us that, you know what, you're messing up. You need to get your acts together. Or, yeah, what you're doing is great, keep going. Because sometimes we need that encouragement. Sometimes you're doing things, you're doing so well, but you don't quite see it that way. You need someone else to encourage you and tell you, you know what, you're doing great, keep doing. You know, what you're doing is brilliant. Or, you know, that thing you normally do that. Oh, that's fantastic, keep doing that. And that keeps encouraging you. So it's very important to have coaches, mentors, consultants, people around you that can really do that. And if you feel that you don't quite have those people, you should actually make it an objective to look for those people. For instance, one of my goals last year, I had people that I actually had handpicked, basically, and I said, like, this year I want to expand my relationship with these people. I want to spend more time with these people. I want to invest more in these people, give more to these people, because I know they can be my mentors, my coaches, they can be people that can really take me to the next level in the area that I want to get to. And I deliberately initiated that contact. I deliberately didn't just go to them and say, like, you know what, I'm gonna, you know, I need your help on this, that, and the other. But I deliberately started adding value to those people's lives. And as a result, that, because of that enriched relationship, they started mentoring me without even me asking them to. And come at the end of the year, when I was doing my own review, I looked back and I said, wow, that was great, because now first and foremost, I've developed these great relationships. But second, I've got myself some mentors that are really helping me push myself further in the journey that I'm trying to go. So it's something that you can do deliberately if you feel that you don't quite have mentors to take you where you want to go. And that can really make a big difference in your journey to success. Now, the third one is to learn from other people. Now, this sounds very similar to the other one, which was, what was it? Learning from outside voice. It sounds very similar. But when I'm saying other people, I'm not referring to mentors, coaches, and consultants, because with those are people that you have a relationship with, people that are close to you. With other people, I'm talking about people that inspire you, but you don't have a personal relationship with. Okay? For instance, with me, Jim Rohn. I love Jim Rohn. We're doing his book right now. But I cannot have a relationship with him because, well, one, he passed away 10 years ago. And even if he was alive, the chances of me actually meeting him and having a relationship with him is really slim. So these are people that you can look at them from a distance, but really learn from them still. And that can either be positive or negative. It doesn't have to be people that inspire you. Sometimes it could be people that have failed in certain areas, but then you're studying them, you're learning from them, you're looking into their lives because you're trying to learn from the mistakes so that you don't end up doing the same mistakes. Because sometimes that's the problem. We tend to focus on those who achieved so much, which is great, and we need to do that even more. But we don't quite do enough. We don't quite learn enough from mistakes of others. One, because there are not that many books out there written about people's mistakes. People don't tend to write their mistakes, do they? People tend to write their achievements and their successes. That's one. So we don't have that much of that, which is unfortunate, because if we had lots of material out there on people's mistakes, I think that would be so great, because then that would teach us what not to do, which is brilliant. But yeah, it's important to learn even from people's failures. I'll give you an example. A couple of years back, we wanted to start a new business in an area that we were not too familiar with. It was in an area of food processing, and we were not quite sort of like vested in other areas. But we really wanted to invest in this area, and we thought, right, rather than just diving in on our own and start doing the business and making all the mistakes in the world that one could make, we thought the best thing to do is to find someone who's already in that business and sort of affiliate with that person or work with that person. And thank God that we came across this guy that was doing that business, and very unfortunately he was kind of struggling with cash flow. So he was not very successful in that business because he didn't have enough cash flow. So we came to an arrangement with him. We said, like, look, now we have the resources, but we don't have the expertise. You have the expertise, but you don't have the resources. So why don't we work in collaboration, work together? Because he wanted us to sort of like fund him, almost like a loan, for him to do the business, and then he'll pay us back with interest. But we said, no, we're not going to do that. We don't want to invest in your business or give it to you as a loan. What we want to do is we want to work with you in partnership. So we actually in business, working that trade, learning that trade with you, and learn as much as possible from you in the process. But in the meantime, in the interim, we provide the resources, you provide the expertise, and we have that kind of partnership. And we agreed the terms, and we started there. Now, in the course of that relationship, we learned a lot of what not to do. In fact, if anything, we probably learned more of what not to do than what to do. Though when we first coming in, we thought we were going to learn a lot from him in terms of the expertise on what to do and this, that, and the other. And we did learn a lot in that sense. But we also got a great deal of what not to do, almost like those holes to avoid in that business, because we quickly learned why he ended up in the troubles that he ended up financially and in the issue of cash flow. Because of the way he was operating his business, and so we had a notebook that was full of what not to do when we decided to go our separate ways and do it on our own, because we thought when we shouldn't be doing this, because he did that and that and that and it didn't work. He did that and that that didn't turn out really good. I mean, very unfortunately, we ended up losing some of our money as well because we were working with him. So when he makes the mistake, we tend to lose as well in a way. But what we learned through that experience was priceless, because when eventually we went solo, we went separate ways, we did that business on our own, and it became really successful. And we didn't really make any grave errors. I mean, in business, we always make a mistake here and there, and everywhere, but they were all sort of small things. We avoided major problems because we had learned most of those from the other guys' mistakes in that sense. So it's really, really important to learn from other people's mistakes and errors, because that can inform you a lot and help you really move forward rather than going back and forth, because you're making a lot of mistakes out of not knowing what you're doing, basically. So yeah, So a few things to learn from this. Do not despise those who fail. Learn from them. Do not hate those who succeed. Now, this sounds like a given, but it's quite unfortunate that sometimes I feel that we do not celebrate successes as much as we should. And let me speak a little bit about our communities. Let me speak a little bit about communities, diaspora communities, ethnic minority communities, especially here in the UK. I feel we don't quite celebrate those who succeed amongst us as much as we should. And as a result, we tend not to have heroes amongst us. And I think that is quite unfortunate, especially for the next generation, our young ones. Who are they looking up to? I remember I was watching one program. I can't remember whether it was on telly or on YouTube or Facebook. I can't quite remember. But there is this fantastic guy. He's an African-American guy in America, and he's a teacher by profession. But during the lockdown and during the pandemic, he invested his time teaching kids online and teaching them science. And he was a really good teacher, very inspiring, doing lots of experiments on YouTube and videos and sharing with kids around the world. And very inspiring. So they were interviewing this young child, probably around the age of 5-6 years, who was also African American, and they were asking him, how do you find this teacher? How do you find this guy? What do you think about him? This, that, and the other. And the first thing this child said, like, I like this guy so much. And they asked, why do you like this guy so much? He said, he looks like me. And that really struck me because this child, probably most of the other heroes he looks up in movies, for instance, or on television, maybe even his teachers at school, maybe majority are of a different ethnic background, and therefore to him, seeing a person that looked like him, doing such great work, doing such fantastic teaching and inspiring people around the world, really resonated with that child, and that child got really inspired and started liking science just because of that. So sometimes having these heroes, having these, celebrating these successes in our communities can go and create, like, really refining our philosophy and really challenging us to do better. So I think that's something that we really need to look into in the future, certainly. And I think we had a bit of a discussion on this when we were talking about community leadership a couple of weeks back, months back, maybe. Speaking about really galvanizing our communities and celebrating the heroes amongst us, and really ramp it up as much as possible, because the more you do that, the more we have people we can fixate on, a bar we can sort of, it raises our bar as to what is expected of us, or as what is we are capable of as a people, if you understand what I mean. So learning from other people is really, really important. The next one, again, is to capitalize on the power of positive influence. We are all a composite of our past influences. I mentioned this before, that since infancy, from birth pretty much, we are getting influenced constantly by the things around us, by people around us, first by our parents, and then by our friends, our peers, our colleagues, our teachers, and then later on, especially with the age of social media and the internet now, with everybody else around the world, you could be influenced by someone on the other side of the planet. You could be influenced by someone in Mars. I mean, soon to come. I see, what's his name? Elon Musk wants to send someone into Mars. So we get influenced by people from all over the place, and we become a composite of those influences in our life. So it's very important to pick and choose who we allow to influence us, and what sort of influence do we welcome in our lives. Excuse me. I was just closing the curtains because it's quite bright. Right. So it's important to pick and choose who and what we allow to influence us in a positive way. Jim Rohn once famously said, "You are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with," and I find that very true. Someone took this a little bit and said, oh, you know, if you say this, it's like you're taking away your own conscience and your own, you know, your own willpower. And maybe you should say that if you are the average of the 5 people you spend time with, including yourself. But all those are just semantics. At the end of the day, the people you surround yourself with, the people you spend the most time with, will impact your thinking, will impact the way you act and feel and think, and it will influence you in one way or another. So the question I pose to you today, do you know the people who influence you the most? Who are the people that influence you the most? Do you know them? Because it's very important to live your life actively, to live your life deliberately, and to really think of these things. Because sometimes you might have people that are influencing you positively or negatively, but you don't know them. You're not thinking of them. You're not aware that they are influencing you. And as a result, you do not know whether to expand those relationships so that you may be influenced more, or to restrict those relationships because you don't want that influence because it's negative. So you have to really analyze and really ask yourself these questions. Who are influencing me the most? Who are the people closest to me? Do I need to expand those relationships? Do I need to restrict those relationships? Do I need to enrich those relationships? Do I need to invest more time in those relationships? Do I need to invest more of my resources in those relationships? So these are the questions you need to really deliberately think about. Now, choosing your sources of influence is key to determining your philosophy. That goes without saying. I'll give you an example. In America, last year, me and my wife, we spent a lot of time following up on the American news because we were very much hooked on the American politics because they had elections last year. And one thing is so striking there, because they have in their news outlets, they like have these two sides. They have like the conservative media, where you have the likes of the Fox News and Newsmax and on the other side you've got the liberal media, where you have the likes of CNN and MSNBC and CBS News and the like. Now, the funny thing is, they're covering exactly the same stories, but you will be amazed how different their perspectives are. It is night and day. I'm telling you, it's crazy. And very unfortunately, as a result, you have people in America, people tend to either watch liberal news or conservative news. Very few people tend to watch both. And as a result, the nation has been so divided. It's almost like people are coming from completely different worlds when they're addressing their political issues. And that has led to so much divisiveness, and we all know what ended up happening at the end if you've been following American news of late. It's chaotic, but it's mainly to do with the way they consume news, because you have on one side the conservative media bringing all conspiracy theories and all these things from one end, and then on the other side you've got this liberal media. Again, they've got their own angle of things. Everything has to be viewed in their own agenda, and they've got their own agendas as well. You know, they've got it could be their climate agendas, it could be their human rights agendas, it could be their sexual identity agenda, it could be anything, but they have their agendas, and therefore everything they look with that lens. And you've got the conservative agendas as well, and everything they're doing, they're looking at it in their lens. I'm not saying that one is right and the other is not. It's up to you to choose and decide. But what I'm saying, it was just so striking how different one news, one information, one event could come across to two sets of audiences, and therefore that speaks volumes to how you choosing your influences can really have an impact on how you think and your philosophy and how you act even. Because you look at people that acted on that fateful day in January 6th, if you've heard, that's the day that this crowd stormed the US Capitol, and when they were trying to officialize and what's the right word, to formalize the election, basically, to say that yes, Joe Biden did win the election, basically. And these people, these crowds who were sent by Donald Trump, decided to storm the Capitol and wreak this havoc. And lots of these people got themselves in that situation basically because of the information that they've been bombarded probably for the past year, probably for the past 2 years, because they've been being fed the same information and they haven't quite got the other perspective of things. And as a result, they're coming in, they're actually thinking they're doing the country a favor by doing what they're doing. But then people from the outside, they're looking at them and they think, what are you guys doing? You know, so some, you know, if you don't quite choose who influences, you can find yourself in a lot of trouble. And it's very important to, and I know that's a bit of an extreme example, but even in general life, you might not be in those extremes, but even in the middle ground, choosing your influences and choosing them carefully can really have an impact in your philosophy. Right, the next one is a good one. Become a good observer. Many years back, I attended a seminar by this wonderful preacher called Madalitso Mbewe. He's a bishop back in Malawi. He came over to England and he was doing a conference, and I attended it. It's nearly 10 years ago, actually. And one of the things I remember, one of the things that I took home from his message that time, and there are lots of others, but this one that fits in perfectly with this particular point. He said, "Do not pray with your eyes shut, lest your miracle pass you by." Now, he wasn't trying to suggest that praying with your eyes shut is wrong. No, but he was trying to make a point that a lot of times, people of faith have closed their eyes to what is happening around them. In a way, we've kind of cocooned ourselves in this little bubble called church or mosque or whatever else you go to worship, and we've focused on the teaching of our religions and our faith and focused so much on that, almost like in isolation. We haven't really looked around and looked at the world, what is happening around us. We haven't looked around to see how we can really be of impact to the world around us. We've sort of really just focused on ourselves and our faith and what it teaches us, and that's it. And as a result, we've become very ineffective in the world. So we are really effective in church. When we come in on Sunday morning, we're very effective. We're like, wow, we are amazing. We rock. But then the moment we step out of church, we are the most ineffective people in the world. And that was his point. So when he said that, do not pray with your eyes shut. And what he meant is that as you're practicing your faith, you need to know what's going on out there. And you need to know how you can be of impact out there, what you're doing in church, what you're doing within these confines of your faith house, whatever that is, makes you relevant out there. Because those who went before us, you know, the prophets and the apostles and the people of faith in the past, that's what they did. The reason we're reading about them today, the reason that they're even in these books that we're reading, the Bible or the Quran or whatever it is that you read, the reason they're in there and the reason that we're reading them today is because they were not just impactful in the world of religion, but they were impactful in the world around them. And that's what made them what the household name that they are today. So that was his point. And I think that is a really important point. It's very important that we become really good observers of what is happening around us and really take stock and really take time to get things to sink in, you know, to pay attention to life around us, you know, to be present in the moment. I mean, this is something that I've started learning only in recent years. It is something that I never took much attention of, but of late, I've really been trying to do this in the past few years, to really be present in every moment. If I'm spending time with my kids, then am I really present there with them? Am I really spending that time? Am I really absorbing what is happening? Am I really listening to them? Am I really trying to understand them? Am I really appreciating what is happening? You know, when I'm spending time with my spouse, when I'm out and about, for instance, when I go out jogging, when I do my daily runs, I never put headphones to listen to music. I mean, I love music. I'm a musician myself, but I never go out with my headphones. Why? Because I don't want to shut the world out when I'm out doing that, because that's pretty much the only time I get to see the world. That's the only time I get to hear the world. And why do I want to shut it out? Because why don't I take that time to soak it in? Because that's how you get inspirations. That's how you get things. And so usually when I go out for my runs, I usually try and listen out as much as possible, soak in as much as possible, say hello to as many people as possible, and really appreciate what's out there as much as possible. And what tends to happen is usually, as soon as when I go out for my runs, I get a lot of inspiration. Usually as soon as I get back, that's the time I usually bring my journal. We'll talk about the journal soon. I bring my journal out and start writing stuff down because I've got so much inspiration. I've got so much stuff. And even a lot of stuff that I tend to share with you guys, most of them are the inspirations that I get when I'm out running. Now, because I take time to observe, I take time to take in whatever comes in. So I don't try and shut myself up. Now, I'm not trying by any means to say that it's not good to run listening to music. No, if that works for you, then by all means keep doing that. But I'm just saying what works for me. And usually that's not what I do. So yeah, try and be present, be in the moment, soak in. I always say this, there are two kinds of people in life. There are those who get through the day, and there are those who get from the day. What do I mean by get from the day? They get things from the day. When they wake up in the morning, they're like, oh, it's another day. Oh my goodness, I have to get through this. What they're thinking is, yes, it's a great day. What am I going to get out of this day? You know, in terms of the relationships I'm going to build, in terms of the influence that I'm going to be, in terms of the value that I'm going to add into the universe, in terms of the building, how much more am I going to build myself, my physical body, my mental body, how much am I going to contribute at my place of work, how much am I going to contribute to my friends, how much am I going to contribute to my family, how much am I going to learn, how much am I going to take in, how much am I going to experience life. It's a completely different perspective. And I'm telling you what, you don't have to be a millionaire, you don't have to have the best life ever to be able to live like that. Even if you're going through troubles, even when you're going through issues and troubles, you could still have that same mentality, waking up in the morning and saying like, right, I've got lots of issues going on, but what am I going to take out of today? What lessons am I going to take out of today? How am I going to come out of this day at the end and say, I've added something into my life? I've not just added a year, I've not just added a day. Because sometimes that's the problem. We just keep adding days. A friend of mine once famously said, in regards to birthdays, they said, look, I don't see the point of celebrating birthdays anymore unless I become successful. And I was like, what do you mean by that? I said, what's the point? Because when you're celebrating a birthday, you're just celebrating adding another year. What's the point of celebrating adding a year if that's all you've added? and I thought, crikey, he does have a point. Because you don't just want to celebrate adding a year to your life. You want to celebrate adding value to your life after you've added a year. So yeah, it's all about what you're getting from your day, what you're getting from your week, what you're getting from your month, what you're getting from your year. So yeah, and you do that by being an observer, making sure that everything sinks in, that you're absorbing every moment, every challenge, every experience. You're learning from it, like what we learned before. You're learning from them. You're appreciating them. You're taking time to appreciate people. And you realize later, having a journal and writing down these things really helps you really bring it to life and making it real. And we'll talk about it more when we get to that stage. Another one is becoming a good listener. Listening is a great skill. And it's unfortunate, again, that it eludes a lot of us. A lot of us are very good at talking. I'm very good at talking. I can talk all day. I mean, if you allow me here, I can sit here and talk to you guys from morning till evening. I love it. It's my thing. But listening is a distinct kind of skill. It's very different. There is selective listening, and this is very different to selective hearing. I'll tell you one difference. Selective listening is what you do deliberately. Is when you choose and say, I want to listen to this and not this. Or saying, this is not for me, this is. You're in the midst of a company, they're talking about something, and you're saying, not interested in this conversation, I'm going to change the conversation, or I'm going to walk away. You understand? That is selective listening, because you're deliberately, you're consciously making a deliberate effort to choose what you're listening. Selective hearing, on the other hand, is something that happens involuntarily. It's something that happens without your consent, without your understanding, if you like. Selective hearing is when someone is telling you one thing and you're hearing something else. Okay, and usually selective hearing is because of your own perceived ideas. It's because of your own prejudices, because of your own belief systems. Sometimes someone comes to you. Let's say, for instance, let me put it this way. A good example of selective hearing is this: if you and I are not in good terms, we're not in good terms for whatever reason. They come to you and say, "Hey, man, you know you're really messing up. You know that. I've just told you that." Chances are you will take that negatively and you'll say, "How dare he? Who did that? Who does he think he is to tell me that?" Because your underlying thought process is that this person, we're not in good terms. This person doesn't think well of me. You know what I mean? This person, is trying to get me. And therefore, whatever I say, you're going to interpret it on the lens that it has to be a bad thing. You understand what I'm saying? While if we're like in great terms, you're the best, you're my best mate. We, like just a minute ago, we were talking about how great we're going to conquer the world together. And then here I am, I'm coming to you and saying, "You know what, my friend, you're really messing up." Two things. One, either you might think, this guy is just humoring me, okay? And you might take it that lightly. Two, you could take it seriously that, "Oh, am I really messing up?" And chances are, you feel like, "You know what, I probably need to change." Or you might probably ask me, what is it that I'm not doing right? I've said exactly the same thing, but your response is completely different. Why? Because your own preconceived ideas of who I am to you is different. Does that make sense? And now that is selective hearing. So the way you're hearing what is being spoken to you is different, and you absolutely have no control of because of your preconceived ideas. While as for selective listening is when you're hearing something and you're deciding whether, do I want to continue listening to this or do I want to stop listening to this? Okay? That's the difference. They're both very important, but very different. What I'm talking about here is selective listening. And what Jim Rohn was talking about when he was talking about being a good listener, he was talking about selective listening. It's very important to be able to pick and choose what you're listening to, whether that be on television, on radio, a podcast, people in dialogues, a company, people you spend time with. You need to be very selective what you are allowing to come to your mind, because everything that comes into your mind eventually will affect your philosophy in the long run, especially if it's something that you keep hearing day in, day out. So yeah, the next thing is you need to when you're listening, you need to consider what is being said, because sometimes that we don't quite do that well enough. We listen, but we're very superficial in the way we listen. We're just listening to the words that have been said, but we're not quite trying to consider what is this person trying to say. Because more often than not, we don't end up saying things exactly the way we meant to say them. That's just unfortunate. That's the flaw that we have as humans. And the better we become with our communication skills, the better we are at conveying the message out exactly as we intended it to go out. You understand what I mean? If your communication skills are very poor, basically it means you're not very good at getting out what you're really intending to say. It doesn't quite come out the way you wanted it to say. That's what it is. If you can communicate to people exactly how you intended it to, then your communication skills are brilliant. Now, because we're not quite there yet, we're somewhere in between. Usually when we're talking to people, just listening to the words itself is not enough to capture exactly what that person is going through, or what that person is trying to say, or what that person is trying to get you to do, or whatever it is. So when you're listening, you have to really consider what is being said. You really need to listen to try and understand what that person is saying. Because what tends to happen most of the time is, this is what I used to do a lot. Sometimes I even do it now, but I tend to check myself now that I know better. you're in a company with people and you're talking, a conversation, a certain topic comes up, especially when it's a topic that you're very passionate about. You really want to come in and contribute. Like myself, I like talking. I just want to come in and have my point and make my point across. But then someone else is speaking and I'm polite enough to let that person speak. But when that person is speaking, I'm not really listening to that person to understand. Basically, as that person is speaking, I'm just trying to think what I'm going to say next when that person stops speaking. You understand what I'm saying? So eventually, I end up starting to speak. And sometimes I miss the point. Or I might say something really that that person doesn't need to hear because he's not interested in that. But the reason I didn't realize that is because I was not really listening to him when he was talking. You understand? When he was talking, I was polite enough to be quiet, but I was just thinking what I'm going to say next when he becomes quiet. So we need to really learn to listen, to understand. So when you're talking to someone, you're really there listening to that person, really trying to understand, and it really makes a big difference. And when someone turns around and says, oh, that guy is a great listener, basically what they're saying, they're not saying that guy will be quiet and listens to me. No, they're saying that guy can capture my feelings. That guy can capture my emotions. That guy can capture what I'm really intending to bring out. So yeah. So that's how powerful listening is. Actually, if we can listen well, we can communicate well. If you can listen to people well, then you can capture the emotions, the nuances, the unspoken words, and therefore, when you communicate, when you speak, what you're saying becomes more relevant to them because you're actually addressing the real issue that they couldn't quite bring out with their words. I do apologize if you're hearing background noise here because I've got kids around playing, so you'll bear with me for that. Next, we're about to finish. Don't worry, we've only got 2 more and then we're done. The next one is read all the books. Now this is a big one, but it's the one that we spoke about time and time again about reading books. I'll start it with the question, how many books have we read in the past 90 days? Now that is a question I'm posing to you. And I want you to think about it. In the past 90 days, in the past 3 months. So this is February. So go back from December, January, February. We're coming to the end of February. So yeah, December, January, February. Think, in this time, how many books have you read? Is it 1 book? Have you not read any book at all? Is it 2 books? Is it 3 books? Is it more than 3 books? Think about it. And then you can even go farther and ask yourself, why haven't you read any book? Or why haven't you read as much as you should? Let me put it that way. And look at the reasons that you come up with. Try and assess yourself. Is it because you think you don't have time? Is it because you're not organized enough? Is it because other things take precedent? Is it because you're always so tired? I want you to start thinking of that as I continue with this presentation, because at the end we'll have a poll and there'll be a couple of questions that I want you to answer. So if you take time to think about it now, when it comes to the poll, it'll be easy for you to answer them really quickly. Jim Rohn says this in this book that we're reviewing today. He says, there is very little difference between one who cannot read and one who will not read. The result of either is ignorance. Now that is very it's very direct, isn't it? But it's very true as well. In the fact that you have people that genuinely cannot read, and maybe they cannot read because of the language barrier. Maybe they cannot read because they are dyslexic. Maybe they cannot read, whatever it is, that they struggle when it comes to reading. But then there are those that they just wouldn't read. I mean, they are very good in language. They spend all their lives learning the language. They know the language. They are probably multilingual. They can speak multiple languages, but they just wouldn't read. So the question I'm asking is, what's the point of learning all these languages if you're not going to use it? Because there is so much wealth of knowledge out there in all the different languages, and it all captures something different. You know, like if I knew German, there are books written in German that is not interpreted in any other language. And therefore, the only way I can get that vast knowledge is if I could reading German. Unfortunately, I don't speak German, so I'll never know those stuff. And it's such a shame. But you have people knowing so many languages. The question I'm posing to them is, how much knowledge are you gathering from those languages? How many books have you read in Swahili? How many books have you read in French, if you know French? How many books have you read in Spanish, if you know Spanish? Because there's so much wisdom out there. There are poems, there are books, there are novels, there are education books, there are wisdom books out there. How much have you captured? Because all that adds flavor and adds value to your philosophy. It adds dimension, and it really expands the way your view of the world. It will serve you well if you really read as much as you can. It really doesn't matter too much what you read at this stage. Maybe that's for another time, we can talk about it. But it's important to just keep capturing as much knowledge as you can, especially when it comes to knowledge books. Not so much with fiction stories. I mean, they're very important, they're very good. I love fictions. But I'm talking more about knowledge-based books where you can really capture information and really learn about what's happening out there. It's very important. So the more you read, the more you refine your philosophy. And reading is essential to rise above the ordinary. If you want to be extraordinary, you can't bail out of this one. You really need to be a person that reads as much as you can. Jim Rohn says, I love Jim Rohn. He's got so many quotes. One of the other one of my favorite quotes from him is, he says, the first question you should ask someone who wants to be successful is, can I see your library? I mean, I've paraphrased it. He says it slightly different. He says it's more inspiration, but that's basically what he's saying. If someone comes to you and says that, I want to be very successful in A, B, C, D, E, the first question we should ask is, can I see your library? Basically, what Jim Rohn is saying is, what are you reading? If you want to achieve and be successful in a certain area, it all comes down to what you're feeding your mind. What sort of books are you reading? And if your library is limited, then your success will be limited. And he says that I don't need to look at your bank balance. That's what Jim Rohn says. I don't need to look at your bank balance. All I need to look is your library, and I can tell to the nearest dollar what your earning is. And I mean, obviously he's exaggerating, but the general point is true. Our success can be limited or broadened by the amount of knowledge and books that we're reading and the amount of information that we're consuming, and the quality of it as well, obviously. Another question I want you to ask yourself: indiscriminate TV versus indiscriminate reading. You've heard this term, indiscriminate TV. Indiscriminate TV is when you just resign to the sofa, pick up remote control, and you start flicking channels on TV. You're not really looking for anything. You're just browsing around to look whatever is there, whatever might catch your eye and your attention. And 2 or 3 hours later, you haven't really watched anything of value. You've just spent time flicking around channels, having a laugh here and watching this there and doing this. That's just indiscriminate TV. Now, a lot of us are happy to do that. But then when it comes to books, we tend to be very selective. We tend to be sort of like, when you tell someone, how many books have you read? The first thing that comes to their mind is like, what can I read? It's almost like they want to be very specific. It's like they wouldn't read anything until they know exactly what they need to read. So my question is, you can do indiscriminate TV. You can watch anything as and when, but you can't read anything. Why not have that same behavior and just read anything? I mean, because with reading, the first thing is creating that discipline. Content is very important, I agree. And I'll be the first one to testify. You need to be very focused onto what you're reading and really be serious with it. I was having a conversation with Bokeh here earlier before we started the meeting. And I was asking her whether she's read this book by Jim Rohn, The 5 Major Pieces to the Life Puzzle. And she said, no, I haven't read this book. And she gave me the most fantastic reason ever. She said, it's because at the moment, there are books that I'm already reading and I don't have time to read any other books. So probably once I finish the books that I've set myself to read, then I can look into getting that book and read it. And I thought, like, fantastic. That is the best answer you can ever give me, because it shows that you're disciplined in what you're trying to achieve, and you're modus operandi, should I say, of knowledge acquisition is very focused, and you know exactly what you're after at any point in time. And that is brilliant. But before you get to that stage, if you're not there yet, then the first discipline you need to get yourself is the discipline of reading first and foremost. So it doesn't really matter what you're reading, but you need to get yourself into the habit of picking up a book and reading for half an hour a day, reading for an hour a day, reading for 2 hours a day, whatever, depending on your time, you know. And really looking for those times and thinking, right, maybe if I'm feeling very tired in the evening, I can't read in the evening. Can I be reading in the morning? Maybe I'm traveling using public transport. Can I be reading while I'm commuting to work? Okay, maybe I'm driving rather than reading. Can I be listening to audiobooks rather than listening to music in the car? Can I put audiobooks and listen to audiobooks instead? There's so many books that I've never read cover to cover on paper, but I've listened audiobooks several times. And there are books that I actually started listening to them as audio, and then because I liked them so much, I went on to purchase the hard copy and read it, you know, like that physically, because it has a different feel to it. I have to agree. But the most important thing is we need to develop that habit and that discipline to be readers, because the more informed we are, the better decisions we make, and we see this even in the world of medicine. In medical school, you're taught that it's all about evidence. Anything doctors do is based on evidence, and all doctors they swear on Hippocratic oath, which is its very first line says, "Do no harm," and basically, for you to administer medication or a procedure or a treatment, you need to be sure that what you're administering or what you're offering to your patient will actually help that patient. The question is, how do you know? And the answer is evidence. There is lots of literature out there. There are lots of researches happening out there. Now, if you're not keeping yourself with all the latest literature and you're relying on the things you learned 10, 15, 20 years ago, you learned in medical school, you're going to be causing trouble, because you need to keep yourself abreast with all the new information and know what the new research says about this treatment, what new research says about this, because things do change. And therefore, the more information you have, the better decisions you make. And that's what we call evidence-based medicine. And therefore, sometimes you might go to your doctor today and they might give you this medicine for a particular condition. And you might come back 10 years on, or even 5 years, or even 2 years later, and they might treat you completely different. Why? Because there is a new information that has come across, and there is a new way of treating that is better, and there is evidence for it, there is research for it, there are some publications for it. And therefore, we keep informing ourselves, to keep learning, we keep evolving, and that comes only by reading. So I can't emphasize enough, guys, reading is the real deal. And the last one is keeping a personal journal. I kind of hinted on this before when I was talking about personal experiences. The best way to capture your personal experiences, the best way to be a good observer, we talked about being a good observer, is to keep a personal journal. What is a personal journal? A personal journal is a book, not pieces of paper flying everywhere, a bound book that you can write in daily or regularly about your experiences, about your plans, about your ideas, about your insights, about your feelings, about what is going through the day, what you're planning for the future, about your visions. And that's where a journal becomes different from a diary. A diary basically is a historical book. You're just capturing what has happened, the events of the past, what has happened to you on the day, what happened to you last week. It's almost like a history book of your life. A journal is both a diary and much, much more. Because with a journal, you're capturing your vision, you're capturing insights. You remember when I was talking to you about when I do my runs, when I come back, I'm very inspired. I have lots of inspirations, lots of insights, lots of ideas, and I go straight to my journal and start jottling down. That's what a journal is for. It has lots of ideas, lots of inspirations, lots of visions, lots of dreams, what you're thinking of doing. There are things I've written in my journal. I'm not even going to attempt to try them now. One, because I don't have time for it. Maybe I don't have resources for it. But it's an inspiration. It's a dream. It's a vision. It's in there. You know what I mean? It will come a time I'll have the resources. I'll have the time. I'll have the capability. I'll probably have the energy to pursue it. but it's in my journal. So a journal is something that you can capture everything. You can be more observant. You can really capture the present for future review. Sometimes I go through my journal and my past journals, and I look at them and I'm thinking like, wow, Charles, 5 years ago you wrote this? Wow, this is brilliant. You know, or sometimes you look at it and you think, goodness me, why didn't I read this earlier? How come I forgot that I had these plans? I should have worked on this, which testifies to the fact that I don't read my journals as often as I should. But yeah, so it's important to have a journal and write on it regularly, but also go through it regularly and read it regularly. I go through my journals a lot, and sometimes I get lots of inspirations even in my talks based on things that I wrote down in my journals back in the days when I was not doing talks. You understand? So journals are really, really important. But it's not just about capturing your emotions and your present circumstances and experiences. Journals also helps you think more objectively. Why? Because what a journal, when you're writing, writing helps you slow down your flow of information. You know, when you're thinking, you're thinking haphazardly. You know what I mean? You're thinking, you can think about a million things at the same time, but you can't write a million things at the same time. So when you're writing, you are streamlining your thoughts. You can think more objectively, you can think more slowly, you can scrutinize your ideas more, you can scrutinize your philosophy more. Sometimes I have this brilliant idea and I'm thinking, oh, today I've had a great day, or I've had a terrible day today. And I've gone into my journal, I'm started writing about how terrible the day is. But because I'm thinking about it, and when you're writing, it's only one idea at a time and you're writing it down, I have time to think about it. I have time to think, why was it that bad? Was it really that bad? Maybe there was something good. And it helps you really elaborate on a thought that in your head would have been so haphazard, and it streamlines it really well. And it helps putting our philosophy into intense scrutiny, and it really helps build us into much better thinkers, if you like. And also it helps us, it develops the ability to communicate more effectively. Because when you're writing on a journal, you're trying to transcribe your thoughts, what's going on in your mind, onto a piece of paper. And trust me, I encourage you to start journaling if you're not. But I can tell you now, when you're starting the journey into journaling, it's hard work, because you have a lot of things in your mind, but putting them down becomes really difficult, because you have to really think, how am I going to write this? How am I going to write this down? And you think, and you end up into this loop of overthinking it, and you're doing this, and it's very hard, and there is no way around it. You have to go through that, and over time, the more you do it, it gets easier and easier, and it gets to a point where information just flows. You have this great inspiration, and when you get your book and you start writing, it just flows, and you just write pages after pages after pages, because you have learned that art of transcribing your thoughts into written words. Now, what does that do to you? It is the same process when you're communicating to someone else. People find communication very difficult because they find it hard. You remember I said it before, to genuinely and faithfully represent what they're thinking and what they intend you to hear in words. It becomes difficult. So they say something and they kind of feel like, no, that didn't come out right. You know what I mean? But if you're very good at journaling, you've learned the art of transcribing what's in your thoughts into paper. It also helps you because it makes your mind so clear, and you become very good at expressing yourself. And it becomes very easy for you to express yourself when you're talking to people, when you're having a conversation with people. So your communication skills are boosted tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold even, because you're very good at transcribing your thoughts and bringing them to life, if you like. So journaling is very, very powerful. It's very, very important, and can really, really help improve your philosophy. And I've got these two quotes here, one from Jim Rohn, one from myself. Jim Rohn says, "A life worth living is a life worth documenting." So if you think your life is worth living, then surely you should start documenting it right now. And another wise man by the name of Charles Stevens said, all the world's literature was once an entry in someone's journal. so it's true. I mean, now you read through history, science, Newton's laws of motion. At one point, these were not in these books, massive, elaborate bound books of science and physics. They were in this guy's journal. He was writing down sitting under an apple tree, writing his journal, and then an apple fell on him, and the rest is history. This guy called Isaac Newton. You understand what I'm trying to say? That everything was first written, it was just an idea, and someone wrote it down in his own journal. And now we're looking at it as literature, as history, as science, as great wealth of knowledge and wisdom. But it started with someone writing it down. So I encourage you, do the same with yours. You've got inspirations. Don't sleep on it. Don't let it lose its focus, its intensity, its energy. When it's intense, that's when it's the time to write it down. And when you're capturing it, try and capture the emotions of it as well. Don't just write the word like I need to start this business, A, B, C, D, and you're done. Capture the emotions of it. Like, because when you're thinking of starting a business, the reason you're so excited about it is because you're thinking what that will mean to you, what that will mean to your family, what your increased income would mean to your relationships, what your newfound time and freedom would mean to your. So those are the things you want to capture when you're writing down about your new idea for business. Like, right, if I do this business, this is what it will do to my time. This is how it will make me feel. This is how I feel right now, even thinking about. Capture all that, because it is those emotions that get lost if you don't record it. So it's very important when you're journaling to capture emotional things, and because that will serve you well in the future when you're going through it, because it will galvanize you into action. So there you have it. That was my last slide, and yeah, and so that is how you can create a powerful personal philosophy. You can build a powerful personal philosophy according to Jim Rohn. Let me stop sharing. Yeah, here we are. According to Jim Rohn, and yeah, I hope that was useful to you guys, and great.